How many podcast listeners do you need to make money? I think you're going to be very surprised at my answer. There are actually a couple different ways to approach this with some very different answers. Are you ready? All right, let's dive in. By the end of this video, you're going to see two different ways of approaching a podcast, two different ways of generating an income, two different ways of getting paid. The big difference is how many listeners you need to finally get paid with your podcast. You ready? Here we go. First, there is the typical podcasting as a business model. What you're doing is you're creating a show that's going to be in demand. A lot of people are going to end up listening. A lot of people are going to end up tuning in, downloading, listening to your content. And with so many ears on what you're saying, advertisers are going to want to have access to those ears, and you are the gatekeeper. How about that? That's a pretty cool way to do it. That is a very typical, very simplified version of podcasting as a business, just like TV. A hit TV show has a lot of viewers. A lot of viewers means the network can charge advertisers a huge price to run their commercials. That's kind of what you're talking about here. That's pretty much what you're talking about here. There are certain nuances and twists and turns to that, but it still works out to the same thing. Ears means advertising. More ears means you can charge more to the advertiser. Now, there are several different ways to work that, not just straight ads. Okay, that's the most typical one that most of us are very familiar with. There's sponsorship type of stuff. There are people who will sponsor your podcast in exchange for a mention or something like that, or maybe they'll donate in kind. Or, for example, some of my favorite podcasts and stuff like that that I like to watch and listen to have to do with video editing and stuff like that. Well, there are various companies that add stuff to video editors, and in exchange for a mention, of course, the podcast host gets to use the stuff for free, that kind of thing. There's sponsorships in that regard. Maybe you could have special private groups or hold off microphone events or special meet and greets or something like that. Maybe you could even do off podcast events, still make them online, still do them like in a Zoom meeting type of thing, but everybody gets together right there on the online instead of in person. People are going to be spread out. I don't think you're going to find like 10,000 people in one location. If you've got 10,000 listeners, they're spread out all over the world, but everybody can jump on a Zoom call no matter what time it is. That's very cool, and you end up making some really great relationships. That is the typical way of monetizing a podcast as a business. The podcast itself becomes your job. Does that make sense? You see how that works? Ears for access, charging for advertising. That's how it works. We're trying to build these things into your business, whether it's a YouTube channel, or maybe it's a podcast, maybe it's your blog, or maybe even radio commercials. Whatever the case may be, building it into your business, that's what we do here at this channel. So if you like this episode, smash the like button. If you're going to be around and you want to see some more stuff coming up, be sure to hit the subscribe, because we're going to cover all of that stuff in the future. And, well, you can see we've done quite a bit already. There's even more on the way. So hit subscribe and you won't miss any of it. Now, the second version that I mentioned, first there's podcasting as a business model. The podcast itself becomes your job. The second version is podcasting for your business model. The podcast becomes an extension of your company, your brand, your products and services, even extension of you, depending on how involved and who you are in the business. Face it, if you're a financial advisor, you're the financial advisor, so it becomes an extension. The podcast now becomes an extension of you, your philosophy, your investment, how you help people with their investments and set them up for retirement. Maybe you've got a special formula you like to use. So much of this, you know, annuities and stock and mutual funds and 401ks and all that kind of stuff. You've got a special blend that you like that works out really well with bonds and all that kind of stuff. That's your personal style. Great. That's fine. That's what you're going to be talking about and teaching in your podcast, because you're not necessarily going for dozens or hundreds or thousands or tens of thousands of listeners. You need one listener that goes, wow, I think that's really cool, and I like the way you do that. would you do that for me? Would you apply your investment solutions to get my retirement squared away? Would you apply your fitness regime to what I like to do during my day and help me get into shape? Your recipes so I can lose weight, your this so I can do that. Whatever it is that you're teaching or doing in your business then becomes the de facto subject, but you're not putting a spotlight on it. You're teaching your audience so they know exactly where you're coming from. And this like totally obliterates the whole know, like, and trust factor. That becomes a non-issue. They know you, they get to see you, they like you, they trust you, and many of them will become clients. They'll reach out to you and become clients. That's what the whole point is. I would be remiss if I didn't say it here. I hope you're learning something about this and realize how you can leverage this for your business. But if you need help, that's what we're here for. We're to help you set this up and get you up and running into making your podcast for your business. You see the difference? As a business and for your business, big difference. Tens of thousands of listeners, you only need one. Big difference. It's amazing how it works out. In the original example, in the first example, you want anybody and everybody to listen. You're going to have demographics all over the place. You know what the number one subject is right now? So don't try to make a podcast about this. True crime. There's so many true crime podcasts out there. It's absolutely ridiculous. Well, you've got 18-year-old women and 65-year-old men who are retired cops. I mean, you've got everything that are all over the place. But the one thing they like are the true crime stories. No matter what age they're in, where they live, what part of the country, what part of the world, for that matter, they're all over the place. But yet the one thing that brings them together are true crime stories. People who are specifically looking for a financial advisor, or people who are specifically looking for a fitness instructor, or a business coach, or a sales coach, or a consultant, anything along those lines that you can narrow down and niche down into. You don't want a whole bunch of people listening. You want right fit clients listening. So what is the avatar of your client? That's who you want listening to your podcast. You see the difference in the audience there? It's a huge difference between thousands of people listening and a handful of right fit clients. That's who you want. That's who you want to be tuning into your podcast. And the payoff is completely and totally different. Like I said, tens of thousands of people need to be listening versus one. You just need one person listening, the right person, and they'll want to become a client. It's a very different way of approaching it, different focus, different way of emphasizing things, and a different way of delivering it as well. But the payoff is phenomenal. So if you're really thinking about starting a podcast for your business, let me give you something for free. You'll see down below, engaging your audience. Click on that. It's engaging your audience, 3 secrets to skyrocketing your podcast success. These are some things that most people don't know about, and they certainly don't think about it. But when you get these into place, before you even hit record, you set yourself up for a long-term success, especially using the podcast for your business model. So click down below, get a copy for yourself, engaging your audience. I'm Nic Natarella. Thank you for watching.